Member for Ballina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Planning and Homes. Minister, given the extreme housing emergency in the Northern Rivers made acute by recent and current floods, when will you deliver on your 2019 commitment to cap holiday letting to 90 days in Byron Shire so that 1,500 whole homes can come onto the private rental market immediately?
Minister. Order. Order.
That was last year. Mr Speaker, I thank the honourable member for Ballina for her question and acknowledge her ongoing advocacy in this very important area. Mr Speaker, this government understands the stress and cost of living pressures inflicted on local communities due to increasing rental pressures, particularly during such dire times where we've seen the communities of the North Coast facing continued disaster. But Mr Speaker, it's times like this that we see the true Australian spirit of resilience and mateship, both in support of those communities affected by recent flooding and also the strong support for each other. And I want to acknowledge those residents of the Byron Shire who have stepped up and taken in displaced neighbours from surrounding areas despite facing their own challenges. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to inform the House that today I met with the Byron Shire Council, and I acknowledge, of course, the hard work of the local Mayor, Michael Lyon, who along with the member for Ballina, are strong and very loud advocates for the community of Byron. Another strong advocate, of course, for the Byron community is the Minister for the Arts, Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and Minister for Regional Youth, the Honourable Ben Franklin, from the other place. Mr Speaker, during my former role as Planning Minister, I met with the member for Ballina and a number of councillors from the North Coast about this particular issue that the honourable member has raised today. Since then, changes were made by creating statewide planning rules for short-term rental accommodation for up to 180 days. But Mr Speaker, the recent floods have shown us the need to have more flexibility in our long-term rental accommodation market. I'm pleased to inform the House that at the moment the Government is working tirelessly to ensure that people who have been affected by the floods and lost their homes have a place to temporarily call home. The Government has, amongst a range of other priority measures, set up a housing recovery task force to help with that flood recovery. Mr Speaker, the immediate aim of this task force is to support flood-impacted councils with exemptions and the planning tools they need right now for urgent issues like temporary accommodation and emergency supplies for the community. Mr Speaker, the Government continues to be in contact with flood-affected councils and communities and will continue to work with councils and affected communities to support them through the recovery process. But Mr Speaker, as I've said before, our immediate message for those councils is to do what is practical, necessary and safe to support their communities, and we will assist them with the guidance and advice necessary to support councils through every phase of this recovery. Mr Speaker, emergency accommodation measures are being provided to flood-impacted families and individuals for up to 3 months or until medium and long-term housing options become available. Currently, flood-impacted residents have access to a range of short-term accommodation options, including motorhomes, housing brokerage services, access to short-term housing funding and further accommodation options available through application from recovery centres and, of course, Service New South Wales. But, Mr Speaker, we all know that housing supply and affordability is a challenge right across this great state, particularly in regional New South Wales. And this, Mr Speaker, is a key focus of our government. This government wants people across the state to feel safe, knowing that no matter your income, no matter your circumstances, no matter your plight, that there is a home for you in New South Wales. We must confront these issues with the policy levers that we can control, but we can't do it alone. Our focus is on acting swiftly to boost housing supply where appropriate and provide greater access to market, social, affordable, Aboriginal and key worker housing. Like all the challenges we've faced in the past, we've done it together in collaboration for our communities. Mr Speaker, right now the Government is looking at ways of increasing supply by cutting assessment timeframes and unlocking new housing through infrastructure investment. And we're working closely with local governments to incentivise new development and give greater flexibility for all types of accommodation. Our focus is on boosting housing supply and improving housing access in the regions, all by building on recommendations from the Regional Housing Task Force. But, Mr Speaker, the New South Wales Government is continuing to explore all options in support of the recent flood victims, particularly prioritising what we can do now for short-term rental accommodation to assist housing for victims. So, Mr Speaker, it gives me great pleasure that I can assure the member for Ballina that I'll continue to work with her council, her local community, to collectively seek solutions to provide more long-term accommodation to those who need it, using every lever available to this government.